Thank you, Shafaq and Imran. Ladies and gentlemen, a warm welcome to you all from Pakistan. Good afternoon to everyone joining from Asia and Europe. Good evening to those joining in from Australia, and a very good morning to friends joining in from North America. The global economic activity is experiencing a broad-based slowdown. Inflation is higher than seen in several decades. Central banks across the world simultaneously are hiking interest rates. The world may be edging towards a global recession in 2023. Some of the developing markets may be facing financial crisis, which can do a lasting harm. The cost of living crisis, invasion of Ukraine, and the lingering COVID-19 pandemic all weigh heavily on the outlook. Global growth at 1.7 in 2023 is the lowest since 2001. A third of the global economy will be in recession this year. Pakistan is experiencing its own set of challenges. The economy has deteriorated due to heavy flooding, impacting economic growth, coupled with high inflation and an emerging currency crisis. Finding opportunity during a recession is possible. I remember in 1998, when I worked for Unilever, Pakistan was under similar pressure with depleting foreign exchange reserves and low economic growth. Yet, we at Unilever found numerous opportunities to grow the business and exceed our targets. In today's world, the remedial action lies in the areas of market segmentation, science-industry linkages, information, communication, and technology infrastructure and services, labor markets and skills, venture capital, and entrepreneurship. New economic realities offer a chance for businesses to innovate, reduce costs, improve customer experiences, and enhance employee engagement. The key of success is agility, reworking the business strategy to seize the opportunity. Savvy leaders can take advantage during a recession to grow their businesses, keep profits up, even expand their market share during a time when other companies are stagnant or contracting. With this, I move on to you, Musaddiq. You are leading digital innovations and are a change leader. Tell us what's happening in North America, the opportunities in the economy, in the manufacturing and supply chain and the retail sector, and especially in context to the consumer packaged goods industry. I know you have some interesting slides to share with us on the automation hotspots. So over to you, Musaddiq.
Assalamu alaikum. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, guys. So quick background, Musaddiq Raymond. I'm a partner here at EY, Ernst & Young, within the US practice. I've spent about 15 plus years serving clients in the retail sector, manufacturing sector. I do have an accounting finance background, but I also have an information technology degree as well. So I've kind of played dual roles. So I think one of the biggest factors that we're seeing due to COVID, and now you have the recession and the little bit of an economic crisis that we're all running into, is the digitization of the back-end processes and the front end, right? Back-end could be finance and supply chain and so on and so forth. And then front end may be, launching new ways of working. It may be, customer experience. It may be launching web, mobile, point of sale systems, which can basically, make a frictionless experience for the clients. So what I'll do is I'll share my slides and I'll just kind of walk through some of the opportunities that we're seeing here in the US, and then and then continue the discussion. So hopefully you guys could see my screen. It's the three main areas that we're seeing significant amount of what we call digitization within the retail sector and the manufacturing sector as well. From left to right, it's is the back end processes, the streamlining of the processes, and that may be supply chain, that may be finance, that may be procurement, that may be understanding better the distribution center and the transportation centers, what information exists, what inventory exists. So there's been a significant amount of push to streamline and make the back end processes better, and make the companies more resilient at the end of the day. So we're currently serving hundreds of clients across the globe, focusing on the process optimization, and it may be due to the economic crisis, it may be due to COVID, it may be companies just want to run leaner back end supply chains. Besides the streamlining of the process, the second main area that we see, which is gaining significant amount of traction, is still continuing to find ways to grow the business. Regardless of if you're running into COVID, or regardless if you're running into the economic crisis and the recession and whatnot, the headwinds, companies are still trying to kind of find ways to reach their customers. So reaching the customers may be now not only through the brick and mortar retail stores that the companies have operated for 50 years or 100 years, but now they're launching web catering, and maybe they're launching mobile apps, they're launching online presence, just to kind of make sure that they can find new avenues, new ways to continue to grow the business, or in some cases they are growing business in markets that are less mature, buying out different competitions and whatnot. So I think that's the second area that we continue to see gaining significant amount of traction. Last but not least is still having a frictionless customer experience. So frictionless customer experience may be that many companies in the US, specifically in Europe, are launching what they're calling it the self-checkout. So if I go to a retailer, I don't need to kind of stand in line and wait for a cashier to check me out for what I have bought. I mean, there is self-checkout kiosk popping up in every single retailer. So there is significant amount of traction there, just kind of making the entire experience very quick. On the frictionless checkout, there's the curbside pickup as well. So let's say if I'm buying some goods, if I'm buying some restaurant meals or whatnot in the U.S. I mean, this is something new. Pakistan, I think this was done for a while. Was that I can just kind of pull up in my car. I don't need to kind of get out of my car and just kind of have someone bring the goods, bring the let's just say diapers for the kids, or could be some food. So the entire, if you can think about this, entire value chain is getting very frictionless. The processes are constantly getting optimized, and then companies are still finding ways to basically shift the business, not only from a brick and mortar perspective, which is the physical locations, but also into the web, the mobile, and the point of sale systems. So I'll pause there for a second and see if there's any questions.
I think move on at the moment.
Absolutely. So a couple of examples you guys will see. I know it's I'll try to kind of zoom in a little bit, but I have two slides that I'll just kind of briefly cover. Is that what are some of the automation opportunities that we see within the context of finance, and what are some of the automation opportunities that we see in the context of supply chain? So finance, if you guys could take a look at it from the right to left, and when I talk about automation, it's digitization, it's RPA, it's adding in AI ML, which is the artificial intelligence and ML, machine learning capabilities. So from a core operational accounting, that was my first career, by the way. So focusing on those areas and how do we optimize those. Maybe there are some commission adjustments that are taking place. Instead of having someone focusing on doing those in Excel or manually kind of copying and pasting and extracting data from SAP and Oracle and bringing that into a spreadsheet and focusing on some of the spreadsheet manipulation. I think those type of activities are getting automated very frequently. This is a hot topic across many companies here in North America. The journal entries. I think back in the day, there's lots of journal entries that we're basically looking at, and I'm sure you guys are automating some of the journal entries as well. And there's huge amount of push, huge amount of ask for streamlining the accounting function, streamlining the finance function as well. Accounts payable, yeah, I think you guys see the opportunity there. Bank account reconciliation, I think that's a no-brainer. The same banks are we can access, log in, pull in the same reconciliation, the balances and reconciling across different banks. So I think there's opportunities there as well, and intercompany reconciliation and so on and so forth. So I think you guys see some of the opportunities that exist from a intelligent automation. So we're moving away from just RPA. We're moving away from just looking at the process automation. Now we're starting to kind of add what we call as the intelligent automation. So adding more and more AI in there, adding more and more ML in there, machine learning capabilities. So we streamline the process every single month. It gets better and better. And I'll spend no more than just another 30 seconds on the supply chain opportunities. You guys could take a look at this. It's a very, very manual process, and it has been. Typically, supply chain from procurement to demand sensing to logistics to distribution centers to delivering the goods, and having a view of inventory throughout, consistent inventory. What do we have? What do we need to buy? What is selling better? Right. So the entire what we call is the end-to-end visibility across the supply chain. There are hundreds of opportunities within supply chain as well. Just RPA, process automation, intelligent automation, bringing in AI ML capabilities. So this is something that I'm currently involved at multiple retailers, multiple companies where we're basically finding synergies between supply chain and finance. So finance sits at the center, and then finance has basically procurement function, manufacturing function, supply chain function, all tied very closely. And if we can automate some or all of these, I think that's a win-win for our companies and for all of us.
Great. Thank you, Musaddiq.
Absolutely. Thank you.
A key message coming out for all finance professionals: the mundane jobs are moving away, and the finance community needs to gear up in terms of the digital technology knowledge, in terms of becoming more digital accountant and auditors, having knowledge on data analytics, on artificial intelligence, RPA, machine learning. I think these are the key things that we need to, as finance professionals, reskill ourselves to stay more relevant in the future as well as now. So thank you very much, Musaddiq. I now move on to Akif. You are an assurance expert and have a strong understanding of insurance products. The insurance market and the business may be facing uncertain times. This also presents opportunities for the Canadian insurance industry. If we take a moment to examine the stage of the Canadian economy and the risk landscape, one can identify factors such as inflation, rising interest rates, supply chain disruptions, the impact of geopolitical conflicts, and natural catastrophes. It is no doubt a time of heightened uncertainty, but there are opportunities for those that are bold enough to take these challenges. So over to you, Akif, to tell us a bit more about the opportunities in the insurance sector.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone, and thank you, Khurshid, for inviting, and thank you, Imran, for the kind introduction. It's good to see good old friends after a very long time. And I was listening to the earlier presentations, and Moazzam mentioned presenting in Urdu, and it didn't even, like, it sounded fascinating and scary at the same time. I don't know whether I would be able to complete that, or I will struggle with the vocabulary there. But it would be a very nice idea to go and do it in future. So I like the thought process going there. Um, as Khurshid mentioned, I am within the insurance world, and as a typical insurer or a typical auditor, the first thing which I do is to look at the last year's working papers, and before we actually go into the future and how that lays in, let's think about where we are right now. Insurance industry faced, and in most market, faced lots of challenge with the COVID and the hard market which we had seen in the last decade. And most of the insurers came through these post-COVID remarkably well. Industry not only met its escalating obligation to policyholders, including increased life and health claims, but also went above and beyond by offering free insurance to first responders, premium forgiveness, refunds. Insurers dealt with unprecedented interruptions to their business by accelerating its urgently needed digital transformation as well. And they proved their relevance in the time of extreme crisis, not only as an economic player, but also as a provider of protection and peace of mind for business and individuals. As these recent challenges assisted in softening the insurance market, insurers were able to get certain rate increases and enhance the products and maybe make some investment in the legacy system. At least that's what we are seeing in the North American market and in the European market. Now, if you consider the current economic challenges, insurers are going through to face inflation, high interest yield. Like, this is not new. Like, I think my previous panelist and even Khurshid mentioned it just before the introduction. But that would also be faced with demands on climate risk and social purpose and new form of competition, like increased growth in digital innovation, and on top of that, our favorite changes in the accounting reporting. Irrespective of how, thank you for bringing this slide up. Thanks. I'll come to it in a bit. Irrespective of how each insurer responds, they will need to reassess their strategy, and a status quo is not an option. I think you have already seen some of these general themes, but when I think in terms of insurance industry, these are the 5 key themes which we are looking seeing. I'm glad to see Mossadegh's slide that at least the 3 of them are common within those 2 industries. But I'll try to focus on the 2 which are more unique. Widening trust gap is one of those key things which we are seeing within the insurance industry. To quote one of the recent surveys done by Elderman Trust Barometer, that 54% of the respondent of the survey, and the survey is done for global community, it's not focused to one geography. The 54% of the respondents trust the financial services sector. So that has gone down by 10% a year earlier. So previously, 64% of the respondents were trusting the financial services, and now it is only 54%. This erosion of trust, combined with global protection gap has drastically widened across all sectors. And when I talk about the protection gap, this is basically increasing from 1.4 trillion in 2020 to about 1.9, would increase by 1.9 trillion by 2025. And the most significant increase is within the Asia Pacific region. And that would be accounting for almost half of all the uninsured risk. So what insurance might be doing to strengthen the trust, what we are seeing within our industries is that more and more providers are focusing on elevating the social injustices by creating more inclusive business environment, working to bridge the coverage gap by educating customers and creating affordable products. I think one of the other significant area where we are seeing drastic change is rapidly evolving customer needs. Customers today aren't simply looking for financial protection. They want personalized solutions presented in the context of day-to-day life, be it while buying a car, planning for retirement, or starting a business. Customers expect insurers to go beyond the risk transfer obligation and offer end-to-end solution covering risk prediction, prevention, and intervention too. And to underpin these services with powerful digital and data capabilities. I know Mossadegh did mention about digitization and digital disruption. Within the insurance industry, as digital innovation and adoption continue to fundamentally reshape the risk landscape, they also create opportunities for those insurers that can innovate at pace. I won't dive too much down into digital because I think this would be a common theme throughout. But one relevant survey which I saw recently, and we do talk about it recently, is the markets are shifting. Historically, if you see the insurance market, the Internet of Things had about 105 billion of insurable market. We expect that that market would be increased to 1.5 trillion by 2025. This is the drones insurance market, your Teslas and your EVs and all those things. Even if you think about specific to drones, that is expected to grow from 69 billion to 141 billion. Just few data points. I know climate risk is one of the biggest discussions in the West these days. The growing threat of climate change possesses systematic physical and transition risk with direct implication to insurance industry. The last thing which I wanted to talk about is the convergence, collaboration, and competition. A digital, data-driven economy is allowing organizations to share and collaborate within and across industry, and there are new ways being created throughout. I think I read it somewhere that, or one of the leadership conference I heard, that it is necessary to be conscious about your own capabilities and decide which you want to bring to the table and where you want to partner with a strategic partner. And that would be the key opportunity going forward for individuals who can create their own niche and bring to the table, whether it is in the distribution channel, whether it is in the product assessment, whether it is in the risk elevation. And that's where I think most of the opportunities and challenges would lie. In all, what I would say within the insurance market, a status quo is not an option. I think most insurance company, if they want to be successful, they would have to play offensive, mainly in digital, engage in digital ecosystem, and build customer intelligence. Those would be the three key areas where most insurance companies should be playing with. With that, I'll pause for any questions if there are.
We'll take the questions at the end, yeah, if you don't mind.
I don't at all. Over to you, Kushi.
Right. So if any of the panelists want to add in or comment, please feel free to jump in and add. Otherwise, I move on to Ali. Ali, you work with some of the most successful global organizations in the financial services. The UK is said to be one of the weaker global economies this year with a 1% GDP contraction. Brexit has left the economy 5.5% smaller. Yet the UK banks are forecast to achieve higher profits in 2023. Very interesting, according to S&P Global Ratings. Now, I'd like your thoughts on the strategic opportunities in the banking and fintech world presented in the new economy. Over to you, Ali.
Sure. First of all, अस्सलाम वालेकुम everyone. आप लोगों की मेहरबानी है कि आपने मुझे invite किया और ख़ुसूसन खुशी साहिबा, शुक्रिया आपका कि you pulled all of this thing together. So well done. I'm going to speak from a banking perspective, mainly UK, but actually it's on a European-wide basis, actually on a global basis. So we had the fortune of listening to Salman earlier on, and I would say whilst, Salman covered the commercial side of things, but I think it's very important as accountants for us to understand what does the world look like from a wider perspective within the banking industry. First of all, post global financial crisis, we have seen new regulations or new capital requirements particularly, and also new business practices. So our industry, the banking industry, is a lot more resilient, and there are strong buffers to withstand any disruption challenges, which includes things like Brexit. By the way, Brexit I regard as a disruption event. And we will ride through it. But the main thing is, the focus of this panel is really around the opportunities that are presented. So it doesn't actually matter. We have had the benefit of listening to, Musaddiq, Akif, and also the other speakers before me, but there are only three key challenges that any organization within any industry has to contend with. Number one is digitalization. Secondly is globalization. And thirdly, it is sustainability. And if organizations are able to have a view on these three things, they are set to do well. There is immense amount of change that is taking place within the banking industry. Actually, it's not change, it's a revolution. We have had this 70s mein hua tha, when the first ATMs came out, computers, NCR computers lag rahe the in banking and so on. We're essentially going through the banking model is being challenged completely. If we look at traditional banking industry, and Khurshid Zaiba, you mentioned UK mein kya ho raha hai? There are extensive business transformation programs underway. There is something called open banking. So you got APIs, they can look at all your financial transactions and they can assimilate that data and basically lead to better pricing. There's aggregator models and things like that. So the whole of that traditional banking will be badal rahi hai through open banking. You've seen extensive amount of branch closures, and actually that's where it's going to go. We just heard how the customer experience is really important. And also what I would say is that the channels, banking channels are being digitalized. So that's whole existing, but also what we must do is our ecosystem is changing. So particularly with the banking, you've got a lot of non-banking financial institutions, NBFIs, they're stepping in. Traditional funds, now you get crowdfunding. If I wanted to borrow money for my business, in the old days, I would go and sit in front of a bank manager. That's gone. I can go and raise better pricing just through. So the web is basically really changing the whole way we do business. I'm not going to go into crypto, that's a thing in its own right, but all of these things are actually a big thing. Now, one thing that I was going to pick up on is sustainability, because in a lot of these, we've got a lot of technical accountants and bankers here, they will talk about that. But sustainability gets a bit of a sort of like we gloss over it or we don't really understand it. I think the key message, if there's one thing that this panel or our audience basically listening to us takes away is, okay, the ESG agenda is not going away. Okay, it can only advance. Okay, the concerns about climate change are there. I mean, Pakistan, obviously, jo kuch hua hai, we can't ignore that. Okay, and as a model, one of my clients is Triodos Bank. It's out of Netherlands, and they have made the green agenda as a key feature of their bank. If you get a chance, just go and look at their website. So I think these are some of the changes that are taking place, but within these changes are the opportunities. Khushi Sahiba, can I talk about some of the regulatory things, or you want to pick that up later?
Please, you can carry on. Yes, do continue.
Okay, I'll just take one more minute. And I would say that obviously the firms, as long as they have a strategy around the 3 points that I mentioned, digitalization, globalization, and sustainability, they can have a strategy to capitalize on the opportunities that are there available for them. But aapki environment kaisi hai? That is really important. And that's where governments and regulators come in. Agar aap dekhen ke there are in places like Singapore, UK, Abu Dhabi, and these people, regulators have sat down and said, let's create a framework, a framework that supports these new emergent industries, payment providers, open banking. You have rules and regulations. Now, the regulator is actively going out then building a rule book around this. So that's one key thing. The other challenge or the opportunity or the environmental factors that is there is having a highly developed skill set, a workforce that is there. Uske andar jo hai aapke academia, aapke institutions start coming in. They can play a very, very important role. And a resource-rich country like Pakistan, I mean, they should be really thinking about how can we take advantage of this change and build a workforce or people basically skill them up, upskill them so that we are ready to do that. I know that this is a topic which is very close to your heart, Khushi Sahiba, which is to do with the role of academia and particularly sort of like, digitally enhancing their skill set. That's all I was going to say.
Thank you, Ali. Yes, you're very right. I think we really need to work closely, the corporate sector and the academia, to build the right product, the right finance product, as well as the future accountants or the auditors, for that matter, in all professional fields. And a very important point you touched on ESG. Yes, even times may be difficult. It's not about shelving ESG. It's more about talking more about ESG, doing more. There can be efficiencies also in that respect. And with that, thank you, Ali. I'll move on to Uzma now. You have been a regulator in the oil and gas sector. Some sectors are recession-proof and unaffected by the downturn. Tell us how one can transform the energy sector, and what are the opportunities for Pakistan to make its energy sector greener, cheaper, and more reliable.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone, and thank you. Energy is one thing which I don't see people reducing their use of. In fact, in times of crisis and even in the recent COVID situation, which we saw, the use for energy was enhanced. So what basically can we do for our power and gas sectors? Because these are the two sectors I have worked with closely. And I don't want to make any comparisons, but our behavior pattern as compared to the rest of the world, especially the developed countries, is very different. So we really need to concentrate on changing our behavior pattern. Because of the pricing, we have not been able to pass on the price of energy really because of the social economic agendas of the governments. So what we need to understand is that we need to conserve this energy. If we are not willing to pass on the cost of this energy to all, in all fairness, then how do we go about meeting our energy demand? And how do we meet our energy needs? So our behavior pattern needs to be changed drastically. We, as a nation, because we have not paid the correct price for the energy, we want rebates, we want the energy at a discounted price, which I'm sure nowhere in the world it is an acceptable situation. With the price of energy, what we need to do, and you know it very well, all of you know, that no matter what crisis goes on, the need for utilities does not reduce. This is a basic necessity. Power and gas, these are two basic necessities of each household. So we need to conserve this, and then we need to create an awareness. Our awareness is lacking this thing. In Pakistan specifically, and of course in the rest of the world also, even where you can easily find energy at a reasonable price, they're very aware of their consumer habits. We need to really change our consumer habits. This is very important. And for this, we basically need to run campaigns, or we need the regulator to step in and make certain things mandatory. If you know very well, in the last few decades, we have not been able to pass the price of power and gas both onto the consumer in its full form, which impacts our energy, which impacts our requirement, and obviously then it affects our balance of payments. We take the energy and we are not able to, for example, we are importing gas these days. We import LNG, then we get into a circular debt situation. That has to be avoided at all costs. But the government has a social economic agenda. And for that, it does not pass on the price of all the commodities in all fairness. And it tries to bear the brunt itself, which is not a workable situation. At the same time, the consumer has got into a habit of wasting or not conserving the energy. We need to be very active on this force. And as all of the people have, or everybody emphasized, and the emphasis cannot be underestimated at any stage, is automation. We need automation in our processes. We need automation to reduce the losses incurred by the power and the energy sector, because the cost of these losses also is a huge burden. And in order to avert the crisis created by this special loss, we need automation. And automation in all the processes is very important. So I would really want to emphasize on the conservancy bit and the automation part. And Of course, I would not like to make a political statement at any point. However, the political agendas and the socio-economic agendas may not be of much use in the longer run, because obviously there is a price for everything. And we need to create an awareness that if the product is so expensive, the cost has to be shared. And if you want to bear this cost, then you have to pay for it. I know all my dear panelists have really spoken so much about the things going on in the different scenarios in their fields, but it is very close to my heart, the energy sector. And the main thing which concerns me is the lack of conservancy in us, which we have not been able to really cultivate. So with that, I think if any of you would like to add something to it, you're more than welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Uzma. Yes, we surely need to be more careful on our energy utilization, and even our habits need to change a lot. You're absolutely right. I could go on and on with my questions, but I will take on some questions that are coming from the audience, and please feel free to add in. So the first question, of course, I think people are also worried. How do you see this automation triggering unemployment risk? Having said, what new sectors will be growing? So what new sectors will be growing? Anyone wants to take this, or could I ask Musaddiq to help us out with this?
Yeah, no, I think it's automation is I think it's a value add, right? It's a value add. It's not replacing some of the work that so to speak, the humans were doing. So think of this, that you could spend more time looking at the synergies between finance and accounting and supply chain and procurement and manufacturing, versus focusing on doing bank reconciliation in Excel spreadsheets yourself. So anything that is boring, anything that is what we have heard in manufacturing, anything that is high risk, anything that can kind of jeopardize the safety of our humans is going to be automated at some point in the manufacturing space. So I've given you two examples. Automation in manufacturing is going to be anything that is risky, anything that is boring, anything that is mundane every single day. Someone has to do the same thing. It is, at least in North America, majority of those tasks will be automated, either by RPA and or robots, such as something that's been launched by Boston Dynamics. And then on the retailer side, I think something similar is taking place as well. And that trickles down to accounting, finance, supply chain, and manufacturing and whatnot. So I think I'll consider this as a value add.
Okay,
and just to add to it, sorry, Ali, why don't you go ahead first?
Ali, yeah, you carry on, Akif.
Yeah. Okay. So like, excellent question, and I think I would totally agree with Musaddiq and what you said. The workforce is changing. Like, I think learning new skills would be used, and if I think in terms of my industry, historically, let's take an example of, say, auto insurance. Historically, if I would have to buy an auto insurance, I would have to get on a call with somebody who would try to assess the risk profile, how bad of a driver I am, and how many accidents I have, to give me a code. Now, the way the world is changing, like, all that data is already in place. There is an automated tool which will define the risk and price it, and that price option would be available to me to select what auto insurance I have to buy. Now, as a consumer, I can select between the 5 or 6 different insurance companies which are playing in this world or this field. I would be able to select it. From an insurance side, they have made a redundancy of all those people who were focused on gathering the information and presenting that information and then relaying it to an underwriter to make a pricing decision, or an actuarial to make a pricing decision. So those mundane tasks would be going, but they are being replaced with higher skill, higher motivation discussion. Now, most common reaction to this is that that would mean that there would be a lot of unemployment, which is not true. And I'm quoting one of the stats which I read recently, that currently, and I'm talking about US right now, there is about 8 million people who are unemployed. But out of that 8 million people who are unemployed, which may be a higher number, there is about 4 million people who are not looking for a job, and they're looking to do some kind of business activity, some kind of different retooling themselves in some of those conversations. So it's not about losing of the employment. It is about changing of the employment, changing about how we look things. There are much more entrepreneurs now, and that's how the economy in the world would change. Sorry, Ali, I took longer than what I thought. Over to you.
Sure. I mean, it is a very good question, and I would like to slightly broaden the discussion, which is generally what are the opportunities across board. And I think it traditionally, we have always looked at other jurisdictions, local accountants are better trained and so on. I think it's a real opportunity for ICAP to basically enhance its curriculum. Agar aap log jo hai कि कहते हैं, you incorporate, say, for example, digital automation and so on within your thing, your accountants will be better trained some of the overseas accountants. I mean, and it's a fantastic qualification. You know, it's an opportunity to leapfrog, and I've seen a record number of ICAP qualified accountants come to the UK, particularly because Brexit, okay, it's an issue in the UK, but we are desperate for good quality accountants to come to the UK. And so I think there are real set of opportunities if we're able to capitalize on it. So we shouldn't be scared of it. We should almost embrace this change and use the opportunity that it presents.
Thank you, Ali. CA Pakistan and ICAP have actually incorporated in their student syllabus as well data analytics as well as fintech training. So a student will need to pass these exams before they can move forward or become chartered accountants. So we are quite aware of this, and we realize the importance. In fact, in one of our MSA papers also, what we've taken a decision is that now, whilst doing that paper, you'll have to demonstrate through a dashboard and your analytics, the data analytics, so those through technology. So those are the direction steps that we have taken, and our vision is actually to turn out future digital accountants and auditors. So thank you so very much. Just one last question, and then I will just wrap up the session because we are getting late, which is on crypto. And Ali, that's directed to you, that because of the recent frauds, what do you think is the role of the regulator here? Or regulator in this respect? So if you can just quickly answer that question.
Sure, I'll be very quick. I think, first of all, what's happened recently, that was outright fraud. Okay, it's no different to some of the other frauds whereby you misappropriate funds and so on. So put that aside. But I think, what can the regulator do? I think the regulator should definitely be looking at it. Obviously Pakistan's been with the FATF sort of like experience. We have to be very mindful of the AML aspects of what crypto risks there are for the economy. So I think that's one thing, that look at what's the thinking, the leading thinking. But also on the other side, again, the opportunity side is, have we as a regulator set up a fintech sandbox? I mean, you have such a rich resource in Pakistan. That's almost, if the government is listening, and I'm sure, now that Mr. Tola is there, that's a real challenge that if you can do that, I would sort of like strongly recommend that should be the top agenda, is to set up the fintech sandbox, which is what UK FCA did in order to really get the whole industry moving.
Right. Thank you, everyone. With that, we have many more questions, but we can answer them offline. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, and for a very good discussion. And we'll move on to the next segment now. Thank you.
Thank you for the
Thank you.
opportunity, guys. Thank you. Appreciate it. Assalamu alaikum.